Hey everybody, this is the Rogue Overland Adventure Rig Show. I'm Nick Savacci. I'm here with James.
Hey.
And today we're going to be talking about his 2001 ISUZU Vehicross. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Sure.
And I am really excited, as described in the intro. We're going to talk about your Vehicross, and ever since we ran Overland Adventure together, I've been pumped to learn more about this vehicle.
Sure.
And in the back of my mind, when I first saw it, I said, we're going to do a walk around on this one at some point.
So I'm honored. It's cool. Thanks.
Yeah. No problem. And I'm glad you're here. What I want to start with, though, is let everybody know a little bit about you. Kind of how'd you get into off-roading, and then what brought you into the idea of this vehicle versus another vehicle?
Sure. So I started in probably 1998. I was a dad of 4 daughters that had a very tired wife.
Okay.
And we were trying to figure out some way I could take the kids and go do something fun and give her a little bit of rest. And I wanted a Toyota Land Cruiser, and I could not afford one at that time.
As we all did.
Yeah, right? So I ended up with an ISUZU Trooper.
Okay.
And that's what started it. And I started with a little bit of lift and 31s, and then, started going from there. And since then till now, I've had over 20 ISUZUs of different, different models. I've had Troopers, Rodeos, Amigos, now Vehicrosses. Even had an ISUZU Impulse for a little bit of time. So, ISUZU kind of became my passion. Really dug what they did and how they did it, and ended up with the Vehicross. I actually have a 1989 ISUZU Trooper RS, which is a 1 of 800 1-year only imported.
Wow.
That I ended up putting a Toyota 1UZ V8 into. Was building that up, and like everything that we do, a major swap. Run into some roadblocks and some things.
Oh, yeah.
Got frustrated, wanted to get out on the trail, and my sweet wife said, "You should just find something to get you out on the trail." Found this Vehicross. Always wanted one, but they were rare and expensive, and they were only made 4 years, and they only made less than 5,000 of them. They were all hand built. All of the presses that they used, the dies for all the body panels were made out of ceramic, so they only had a limited run anyways.
Wow.
And so, look at those things. I found one in Denver that was in good shape at the right price, jumped on it, and then the Trooper has now been sitting there for 2 years, and we've taken over with our love with Vehicross. So.
Love it. Now, I'm in a similar boat because I have the first generation Xterra, which also was only a 4-year run, 2000 to 2004. So what years did they make this ISUZU?
So I'll get a little bit quick history. So 1996, ISUZU actually came out with the design for the International Auto Show. It was a concept vehicle, and it was received just wild. I mean, people went crazy about it. So they decided, let's go ahead and produce it for a few years. And so they did a limited run for 4 years, 1997 to 2001.
Okay.
And they did about 2,500 cars per year that they did. And they did it partially because it had good feedback. Part of it, they wanted to race it. And they actually raced it in Paris-Dakar.
Oh, wow.
Won a couple stages, had some good history with it. And it was just different and weird and fun and kooky.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you definitely don't. It turns some heads, no question, when
sure.
it goes by.
Yeah.
Whether it's automotive enthusiasts who are like, so cool to see one of those, or people who are like, what is that?
Yeah. I had a guy yesterday, we were driving over, coming over the pass, and I see this Porsche Cayenne coming up, just fast. And I'm in the slow lane, and he comes up, and he just looks at me and goes, and then just keeps on going. So it was kind of cool.
I love it. The other thing I want to know about this particular rig is what did you build it for? Because as any person who's built an off-road vehicle before, really built any automotive thing, it's hard to be the jack of all trades. And most of the time it's going to be built to overland or rock crawl, right, or be a rock buggy or a mud bog. So what was the vision with this one?
The first thing you said, jack of all trades. It's hard to do, right?
Yes.
But my thought was, it's weird and quirky. And really it's about adventure. So I mentioned to you before we started doing the interview that we've got 4 daughters, and they're, our last one is left the nest. So it's just my wife and I, and we're young. We're in our 40s. We started young, and so
Nice.
with that being said, we wanted to start having adventures. We got married, at 18, had our first child at 19. The courtship was very short. So we're kind of reinventing ourselves and having some fun. So with that in mind, she knew I like four-wheeling. She likes to travel. So we said, what are we going to build? How are we going to do this? And so ended up with the Vehicross, like I said, as a kind of a secondary to this other truck.
Yep.
And started the build. And first I did just a small spring lift and put some 33s on it and just wanted to go have some fun with it. My intention was never to get it to where it is today, right?
Okay.
And then as we started going, we went on Overland Adventure with four-wheeler, and it was a ton of fun. We had never been overlanding. We would consider ourselves, I think I even said it in their interview, we're four-wheelers that camp, right? We're not overlanders.
Yep.
But had a great time. And then the next one we went on is Rogue Overland Expedition, which was amazing and awesome. And that's kind of when it cemented for us, hey, I think this is kind of our thing. We recently got back from a 4-day trip to Baja.
Nice, beautiful down there.
Oh, it was amazing. And a good group of people that we went with, and it was a ton of fun. And that's kind of been our thing. We actually, I don't think we're going to be able to do it this year, but we just got accepted the Alcan 5000. In February. I don't think we're going to make it, but we're going to try. And I think in 2 years we're going to do it the summer run.
Nice.
So it'll be our 50-year birthdays. Wow. We're thinking that'd be kind of a fun. But really, it's just about having adventures and spending time together.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And we definitely enjoyed having you on the Rogue Overland Expedition 2023.
Yep.
And if you viewers are interested, you can watch that video up here. I'll put a link, also put a link in the description. Lots of fun, tons of different rigs, and we ran into some crazy weather. So we won't get into that side story. Watch the video if you're interested, but it was the craziest weather I've ever experienced in Moab, Utah before.
The only time I've got on one tire. So
yes, and I'm probably going to lay a video of that over right here so you can see that. That was intense. That was intense.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into the rig, and what I want to start with is let's start with suspension and tires.
Okay.
Tell me about what you're at now with that.
Sure. So started off, we just put springs on, right? And then we decided we wanted to go bigger, right? We wanted to go to 35s, and so that takes. On a rig, as you know, it takes a lot to get to a 35-inch tire, at least, especially from 2000, right? So we actually have Old Man Emu lift springs in the back, 929 coils. A company named Independent 4x out of New York does some really good stuff for the ISUZU club and market. So I have their heavy-duty links. It's a 3 links from the factory.
Okay.
So I've got some really beefy links back there with Johnny joints. And then I still have the factory. Funny enough, ISUZU actually came out with the first production vehicle with reservoir shocks. And if you look on it, I still have the factory ones. The reservoirs are about that big, right? But they're tiny. But they're so cool. I focused on, we put some suspension or shock extenders on it, so to just get a little bit more droop out of it.
Yeah.
And then really work the suspension. I tried to get I moved the axle back about an inch. And to give me a little bit more center in the wheel hub and then the wheel well, and then adjusted the pinion angle so it rides really well. The front is an independent suspension with torsion bars. So with that, you're kind of limited to what you can do. We did crank the torsion bars up.
Yep.
We do a ball joint flip. So on the upper arm, you flip the ball joint to the bottom side. It actually is basically like a camper kit for it. So it gets your camber right. And then I welded in a diff drop package, so where the mounts go to the frame, we did a 2-inch diff drop to keep the CV joints.
2 inches.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. And it still clears really well, and you have to modify the cross member just a little bit, but
yeah.
And then there's a Isuzu trick that Ford F-150 tie rods parts. Work perfectly, and you can build for really cheap. You can build some really good heavy-duty tie rods,
Like a beefy suspension
super
setup.
big. Yep.
Okay.
So
That's cool.
That's pretty much it. It sounds like a lot, but
now the torsion bars, because my Xterra originally, that's the setup that it was, and so I'm very familiar with the limitations there. Is it an aftermarket torsion bar, or
I do have. So I did replace them with Ironman 4x4. America heavy duty torsion bars.
Sweet. So when they're cranked up and giving you that lift, you still have a kind of a good spring rate, so to speak. It's not just cranked to the dickens.
I mean, it is, but right. I have a little bit of down travel, but not much, right?
Okay.
So it's mostly up travel. But the suspension, as wide as it is and what it does, especially compared to the first early Isuzus, it actually rides pretty well.
Nice.
So I mean, I can do 80, 85 down the road.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah.
And then I've got 35, 1250 or 315 Falcon MTs. So
Okay, MTs.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool. And then what kind of wheel? And then is there? Did you have to get a different back spacing to kind of make it all work? Or?
No, actually, they were originally Toyota rims, so they're 6-lug like a Toyota, and so it makes our options open up a lot. So same with Chevy, and and they're an MB brand. I actually got them off of Facebook Marketplace for really cheap, and they worked out really well. And I have no spacers or anything like that. So
sweet.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the backspace, I think the backspace is like 3 1/4, 3 1/2. So.
Okay. So the natural transition then with that is let's jump into the drivetrain.
Yep.
So going to 35s, have you re-geared? Is there any type of crawler gears in the transfer case? What's going on with the drivetrain?
So that's probably where I've done the most work, actually. And so I actually converted it from an automatic, which the ISUZU Vehicross came with. Okay. It's a GM 4L30E. Transmission, which was never really designed to be in a 4,000 or 5,000 pound truck.
Right.
So it's a little. I would say it's a weak link of the Vehicross and all of the Troopers. That's why you can find Troopers for pretty cheap. But anyways, they did make a 5-speed, so it's an ASIN MUA5.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not MUA. It's an AR5.
Okay.
And AR5 5-speed transmission. So I did a 5-speed swap.
Yep.
It has Isuzu came with, the Vehicross came with what's called Torque on Demand, which was a Borg Warner all-wheel drive system. It had high range and low range. So when you put it into low range, it would lock in full time.
Oh, nice.
But when you had it in high range, it acted like a Subaru.
That's right.
Right. So, which was great for a factory vehicle, but for more intense off-road and overlanding out in the middle of nowhere, I don't want to rely on sensors.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We pulled that transfer case out, and I ended up using a transfer case out of a Rodeo, which bolts up right to the AR5. And I actually have 4 high, 4 low, 2 low, or 2 high. So
okay, awesome.
Yeah. And then converted from drive flanges on the front to hubs, automatic hubs. Yep. Or manual hubs.
Manual hubs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And then so drive lines are pretty much factory. I had to change one end out for a Trooper drive line, which slid right into the slip yoke, so it was very easy. Nice. Bolt up. And then we did re-gear from the stock 430 gears to Trooper 456.
456.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
So just so anybody who's digging in and watching this video because they're researching for themselves, so did this vehicle, did it not come with a manual option then from the factory? Were they all automatics?
All automatics.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
The JDM version, right-hand drive version, which is very few of them, super rare. They had some differences. So it was right-hand drive 1. 2, they instead of having a 3.5 liter V6, they had the 3.2. Which is almost the same horsepower and torque rating, and actually in some minds it's a little bit of a better engine.
Okay.
But it still had the TOD, still had limited slip in the rear, all those things. So other than that, and it had some really funky cloth Recaro seats. But anyways.
Okay. And then how about, I already know the answer to this unless you changed it since our trip, but I'm going to ask for everybody else. What is going on in the differentials as far as any traction aids there?
So limited slip in the rear. I do have another set of 456s with an ARB front and rear sitting in the garage. Like everybody, it's on the list of things to do.
The projects you were talking about. Okay.
So they're already installed. I just need to put the thirds in. So.
Okay. I mean, after seeing you put this thing through its paces when we were out in Moab, I can only imagine where you'll be able to take this thing with selectable lockers.
It'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We're excited.
That's awesome.
I mean, knock on wood, I've never gotten stuck yet with it.
Right. So. Yeah, no, you did great. You did great in Moab. It was exciting to watch too.
Try to put on a show.
Yeah. So how about the engine? Any modifications to the engine, or is that all factory?
All factory.
Okay.
The only thing I did was put an auxiliary fan on. Just when we were on the Overland Adventure run, we were going through the sand.
It was hot too.
It was hot, and when we went through that sand, I got warm, and I didn't have a engine fan on at that time. So that was one thing I did. Okay. Other than that, though, I'm kind of a big believer in the engineers are probably smarter than I am when it comes to engines. I'm not going to mess with them too much. It's the heart, right?
Keep it simple, stupid, right?
Yeah. I could re-gear, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We did when I was as you know, I'm currently on a rebuild for our Xterra on Conius, but the first time I went through the engine. I mean, outside of port and polish, a little bit of work on the combustion, the shape of the combustion chamber and the heads. I think we put a cam in it, but this go round, I'm actually going to go back and not have the cam in it just to keep the power lower. It pushed the power up a little too high for the way that I drive.
Sure.
And but yeah, I agree with you so much. It just the simpler you can keep it. So you can put my Xterra, not to get too far into the side, but my Xterra, there was a factory supercharger option.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, and I get a lot of people that ask, and Nick, his solid axle Xterra has one, but I get a lot of people that say, hey, how come you're not going to throw that factory supercharger in there? And I just look at it and say, I'm out in the middle of nowhere a lot. And so if I can just keep it a simpler setup, then the reliability is better than that additional horsepower for what 100%. I'm doing.
Agree, 100%. That's why I went back to a 5-speed manual transmission and an old school mechanical transfer case. Mm-hmm. When I'm in the middle of nowhere, I want to be able to just, if I have to bump start it, and I can get home, right? Yeah. Versus relying on computers and sensors. So
100%. And if I was a better driver, I'd have a manual too, because that's like the only part for me. I always think, man, I mean, I'm usually out with people, but I think, if that battery goes dead, there's no way for me to push start this thing.
That's right.
Okay, so I think we covered drivetrain. What about what's going on for armor? Any sliders, skids, bumpers, roof rack, that type of stuff.
So the ISUZU is weird, right? Because it's got plastic cladding all the way around, and the bumpers are kind of hidden underneath the plastic. One thing I did do is I cut the cross member out of the rear and slid in a receiver hitch. Into the frame and then welded it as a cross member. Nice. They don't have hitches, but you need a toe point, right? So it works out well and it gets it up really high. In the front, I haven't done anything with the front yet. You have to trim cladding to run 35s, of course, but I do have rock sliders on. They were off of a Jeep. Again, found them on Marketplace for $100, and they were the perfect wheelbase for a short wheelbase Jeep.
Now I'm going to get 5 comments asking which Jeep. Do you recall off the top of your head?
It was
which
TJ.
Jeep it was for?
Yeah,
for a TJ.
Yeah,
okay.
It was a TJ. Yeah.
Okay.
So short wheelbase base TJ fit perfect, and so I welded those on. Yep. And then, interestingly enough, we talked a little bit about this. The Vehicross shares a lot of parts between the Trooper and the Rodeo. The 5-speed manuals had full underbelly skid plates. So I have the Trooper skid plates.
Nice.
Yeah. So it works out good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's something I've always loved about Nissans, and I know there's same with Toyota. If you dig deep enough, there's a lot of interchangeable parts within the same manufacturer. Yeah. So
if you get real deep, there's even interchangeable between the JDMs, right?
I would imagine. Yeah, I would imagine. I've talked to a lot of guys who are much deeper into those type of details than I am. That can hammer off this is the 428 CL and that was in this Chevy and this Dodge, and so it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything else for any other armor, or just
no? That's it.
That's what we're running.
I mean, plans coming up. My full plan is to build complete steel bumpers to go beneath the cladding.
Okay.
So and then kind of make a quick release system on the cladding so I can pull them off.
Oh, nice.
Do the work I need to, and then have receivers front and rear, so I can run a winch, right? But that's down the road. I'll probably get the lockers first.
More projects. Yeah, do the lockers first. And then that's something I think maybe I should just mention for people who don't know, because I didn't know this until you and I were talking prior to this interview. And that's that. It's a body on frame design, so
Correct.
you have a legitimate frame underneath that. It's not a unibody setup.
Yeah, correct. I
which
even
is
have a
super
1.5 inch body lift on it to help me get a little bit more room for the clearance for the 35s.
Sweet.
And then side story, you can get to the bell housing bolt a lot easier on the top with a 1.5 inch body lift.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. So I have a 1 inch puck lift on Conius, and it's the same thing, man. When you need to get up there, it's so nice.
It's either take the intake off, right, to get to the top bolts, or a body lift. And body lift for me, if you don't go too big, I think they're fine.
Yeah, 100% agree. We have several trucks in our corral, if you will, that have a 1 inch, no big deal.
Yeah.
So, tell me about anything electrical that you've done. So let's talk about radio. Let's talk about any lights, stuff like that.
Yeah. So we've got a Midland GMRS radio, and we've got it's a single DIN stereo. So finding something that's kind of cool and works is a little bit of a challenge. So of all the things, Boss actually makes a decent single DIN that has a 7-inch screen.
Oh wow.
We can run Android Auto, and all of our GPS apps and everything run through that. So
it just displays it on the screen.
Right on the screen. That's awesome. There. It's pretty cool. Yeah. And a stereo and amp, because I that age and I like my music, right? So, we've got lights up front. We've got some HIDs up front. We've got some Amazon's finest motorcycle lights in the back for tracers. And we've got a light bar on the top, and so we've got lighting as well. Yep. And then other than that, I try to keep it as simple as I can. So
any rock lights?
Nope, no rock lights.
Okay.
They're on a shelf. I haven't decided yet if I'm ready to commit to rock lights.
You got a lot of stuff on the shelf.
We keep the garage locked. Just so.
Yeah, right. 365 South Claymore Drive.
Exactly.
It's funny you say about rock lights, because for the longest time, I very much take a simplistic approach to my rigs as well. I try to minimize the overland jewelry. I don't like a bunch of extra stuff, basically. Back to that simplicity conversation. But I've found rock lights to be insanely effective, obviously, when you're in that situation where you're crawling at night, which doesn't happen very often, but when you're in that scenario,
right?
The rock lights, otherwise your spotter's out there getting blasted by your headlights, and they're trying to shine a flashlight under your truck to find the rocks. And so that everybody knows. But the other one, which is pretty amazing, is when you have to check something mechanically at night. You throw those rock lights on, and then all of a sudden your whole suspension and everything is lit up. So we've had a couple scenarios with people in our group that we've had to, for example, we had a Toyota, we went to run fins and things, and the 4-wheel drive wouldn't engage. And we had got there, it was planned to be a night run because of when we could get to Moab. And we were on we actually didn't end up getting it to engage, so he didn't run. But we were there for about 45 minutes going through, trying to figure out what actuator, what wasn't going on. And there's a couple guys in the group way smarter than I am with all that electrical stuff. But the nice thing was it was dark, but he had rock lights, so everything was lit up. So getting under there, you still had your headlamp to maybe illuminate a few things, but working on the truck was pretty easy.
That's why I've got him sitting there, right? It's like I see the genius of it, right? It's just one of those things that I think everybody has priorities of where they want to go, right, with their rig, and it's like, I'll get to that one of these days when the weather's not 20 degrees and
true. I've wanted to put an automatic transmission cooler on mine, a fan for it for the longest time, and it's the same thing.
And that was one of the things I did do before the Mojave trip was big, huge cooler with auxiliary fans, because it was like those transmissions are the weak link of those things. And before I did the 5-speed swap, it was like, we won't make it through this. And I didn't want to be that guy.
It's always the thing, right? Just don't be that guy. The first year, and I'll put links to all the Overland Adventure videos in the description, so you can check these videos out if you want. But the very first one, so we've been blessed enough, if you will, to be able to be on all of them, representing Bubba Rope. We've had a long-term relationship with them. We love those guys. But the very first one, there was this long climb. We climbed out of, it was kind of like the Wickenburg, Arizona area.
Okay.
And then over the hills down into Prescott. And there were rigs dropping like flies over transmissions, engines overheating. I mean, it was crazy. We actually had to do some trailer swapping, like off of excuse me, off of one rig to another rig so that rig could tow their trailer up. I mean, it was...
That's always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So anyway, that's a little sidetrack. But you talked about jack of all trades. So tell me what you have for camping setup. What are you doing there?
So we have a couple different roof racks, right? So we have, for our loadouts, right? So we have our overlanding loadout, right? We've got our small rooftop tent on the top. Okay. I believe it's a Silver Wing brand. It's not a silver fancy. I'm big on Facebook Marketplace and Amazon. If you haven't figured that out yet,
there you go.
Right,
it's the way to build them.
Yeah, and I got a brand new tent for like $400. Like never been used in the box, right?
Wow.
So yeah, it was one of those deals, right?
Yeah.
So we threw it on there, and so we've got the rooftop tent loadout, right? So we've got that on the top when we're running overland. In the back, we've got the doors are kind of weird on a Vehicross. If those haven't seen it, the spare tire actually originally came in the side of the back door, so there's a big hump on the back.
Okay.
I've got my spare tire mounted on the outside, but the spare tire originally came on the inside, so there's this huge void in the back door. So what we did is we took the spare out because we don't need a donut anymore.
Right.
And so we put a drop down shelf there, and have our first aid kits and our stuff mounted to that on the underside when it folds down, and also our fire extinguisher. It's a very small vehicle.
Really smart idea. So you're saying it's like a little table.
Yep. I have a table that folds down.
Underneath it is mounted that stuff.
Yep. Yeah, so when it's up,
Smart.
you can get to it really easy, right? But if you're camping, you drop it down, and that's usually where we put the cook stove or whatever, right? And then, we've got a tire table, and we've got, we've got a roam awning, and, all this stuff, diesel heater, because it gets cold, and we're big babies. We're not that tough.
Now, is that diesel heater mounted somewhere, or did you do the box setup?
I bring it as it comes, and I put it underneath the rig, and I've got an extended, really long duct.
Oh, nice.
Like an 8-foot duct that goes up, and we put it up in the rooftop tent. So it works out well for us. I mean,
talking about projects, I've got one sitting on the shelf right over there that has been there for about a year and a half. And every summer I say, okay, before this winter, I need to get this thing in a box and get it ready to go. And just haven't done it yet.
And one of the hard parts too, like especially if you drive a weird oddity, it's not like I can get on a website and buy parts, right? They don't make MOLLE racks for a Vehicross, right?
Yeah.
They don't make anything for a Vehicross. So everything I have, the drop down table in the back door is Jeep, right? It actually has a Jeep laser cut into it.
Oh, nice.
It's cool. I'm not anti-Jeep. It's fine.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Take whatever you're into.
Yeah. Do you?
Yeah. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
When the Xterra, my Xterra is the same way. Nissan in general is bad, but my Xterra, because it was such a short run, same thing. There's just not a ton of aftermarket support. When we had the opportunity to build Helios, the third gen Tacoma we had for a while, that was so much fun because the off the shelf stuff that you could get. And I even had Toyota buddies going like, man, they don't hardly make anything compared to Jeeps. I say, yeah, but you guys don't even know the dark hole that I've been in, So I was like, I wonder about like whatever. This kind of fold out table, blah, blah, blah. And there's like 10 options.
Right.
I was like, what is this? I thought I was gonna have to modify something. So.
And that's pretty much it, right? I mean, if it's not specific to the Isuzu, I'm modifying everything.
Oh yeah.
Jeep, rock sliders, et cetera, right? 100%. So, and it's a very small vehicle that's like a spaceship anyway. So, I mean, the room is at a premium. So I had the seat out for a while. We had a box back there, so we could store all our stuff. Then I found out and realized that the seat actually will fold completely flat. Down.
Nice. Yeah.
So we put the seat back in because we have grandkids, and sometimes the grandkids want to go with Papa, right? So,
heck yeah.
So we did find that you can fold the seats flat, so I can put all my stuff in there still without having to have the seat out. So, it's an evolution, right? The more you go out, the more you do, the more you learn, and then the more you make changes. So, I cut the box up probably 3 different times. It went from huge to smaller to tiny to why do I have this? And then
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I have 3 kids, 2 daughters, which by the way, so I understood. Great job making it through, getting them all out in the line.
You'll get there.
Yeah, but no,
I have no hair.
But it's funny how the progression went with just me and my wife, and then 1 kid, then 2 kids, and I remember we got to the point, those like big camp chairs. Well, I found these little backpacking chairs, and I told her, I said, the camp chairs are gone. These might not be as comfortable, but this is all we can spare the space for, because I can fit 5 of these little camp chairs into the space of 1.5.
Yeah.
You know,
I got 2.
Yeah.
Because the Vehicross is so small,
Right.
it's like we just don't have room. So we have 2 of the small little camp chairs.
Yep.
And they work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Do what you got to do.
Is it the big comfy one from Costco? No, but it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was even a point in the Xterra, we're similar to you. We're very limited to space for space. Not as bad as you, but when there's 5 people in there, and it was to the point where I said, okay, we bring 4 chairs. And then I store stuff in the Plano bins. Yeah, I like those. I think they're great. They're inexpensive. And I said, okay, I'll start sitting on one of the bins.
That's right.
And then we take 4 chairs.
The sacrifice of a dad and a daughter.
So, all right, before we get into my next question, I'm just a quick thing for the audience here. If you enjoy outdoor and off-road content, consider checking out some of our other videos. We make adventure videos. We have the Adventure Chat show where Mike Schaefer and I talk about anything adventure. We do obviously these rig walk around videos, trail review videos, gear review videos, so check those things out. If you're finding this video beneficial, definitely smash that like button, as it's going to help with that algorithm and help some other ISUZU guys find this information. So let's jump in then to something that here at Rogue we harp on, and that's you have to be able to get off the trail on your own. And you obviously commented about you don't want to be that guy, so I know this is in your mindset too. What spare parts are you carrying for this rig?
A lot. So
I could rebuild it on the trail.
We're pretty close. So I always carry 1 full CV axle complete, and then a rebuilt boot kit. With
nice.
grease. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I can do 2 sides if I have to, right? I carry U-joints, front and rear, because they are 2 different sizes. So I have 2 different sizes U-joints. I usually carry a spare alternator, just because they're low on the engine and they're known to get swamped out. So I usually carry things like a spare set of spark plugs. I usually 1 spare set of brake pads. I have 1 brake line.
Okay.
I have
the longest brake line.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Any corner. Yep.
I've got spare vacuum line, oil line, cooler lines, that radiator hoses, spare fluids, spare lug nuts.
Yeah.
I've lost.
It's a big one.
Yeah. People don't think about it, but it's one of those things like, oh, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. Spare air cleaner, oil filter. I could drain all the fluids out, refill them.
So you're carrying all fluid, okay?
Correct.
And then I think I didn't hear it, but I suspect you do. And I don't even know serpentine belt on that one.
Yep, serpentine belt. I even carry a timing belt.
You do?
I do.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a non-interference engine, so it's one of those things that hey, you're in the middle of nowhere and your timing belt pops.
Yep.
I can do it. And then, of course, full tools, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And I think something to be said about that, I've got 2 things I want to say actually from about the last 10 seconds. One of the things is the kit that you carry in the truck is the kit that you should work on the truck on at home.
100%.
Or at least know that, hey, these are always the sizes I carry, so I've got my cheap whatever, trail set, and it has all those pieces.
Yep.
Because a lot of people, well, I don't want to say a lot of people will, but what might not be considered is you go by and you buy a kit from off the shelf and you say, hey, I'm gonna make sure I have tools. But if you don't have that 27 millimeter deep socket that you need to get the CV nut off, you know, you're SOL.
Yeah,
so
100%. Yeah.
So that's something to consider. And then the other thing I was going to say was I'm pretty bad, and Mike's worse than me, but because he always says he can rebuild the entire front end of his truck, you know, from the pieces he carries. But I had never thought about carrying a timing belt, as you know. And I lost a timing belt on the Rogue Overland Expedition 2023, and for me, a timing belt has always been the idea of, you know what, I'm throwing in the towel and somebody's towing me home. And that's what happened is my wife brought a trailer and we towed it home. But kudos to you because, man, I can't imagine. I've done timing belts. I've done a lot of them. I can't imagine doing one out in the dirt.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, like we went to Baja, like I said, right? If you're down in the middle of
You might not be able to
the
find
peninsula,
one.
I might not be able to find one, number one.
Yeah,
and number two, if I'm really in it, I would much rather be relying on myself than relying on somebody else. So I also carry a fuel pump.
Smart.
So, yeah, it's in the tank. It's horrible. Yeah. And then I do carry a spare ball joint. Because they're the same on each side. And so I'll carry those too. So I try to, anything I could think of that I used to carry tie rods, but I don't carry those anymore. It's just the heavy duty ones. I haven't had any issues. So
Right.
But yeah.
That's the big one for a lot of these newer vehicles. Well, a lot of vehicles in general, the tie rod connectors, actually, the little bar in the middle, they're so weak they just bend.
Yeah, and the cool thing about using the Ford ones on the ISUZU for the ISUZU guys is you use a centerpiece, and I've got the part numbers if somebody wants to get a hold of me. But it's so thick and burly, and then the rods thread in so far that it's almost a solid piece.
Wow.
When you set it up right. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. But yeah, I just don't want to be the guy that I don't want to be the guy that's working every night on his truck. So to your point, I try to make sure I go through and prep everything I can weeks before we go. Yeah. But if something happens, I don't want to be the one that everybody's waiting on. So.
Yeah, what you need.
Yeah.
I love it. What you basically told me is I'm a failure and I need to.
I don't know about that.
I need to up my spare parts game. Okay, so tell me about future plans. And I know you touched on a couple of them with the metal bumpers underneath, but what's kind of the future plans for this?
Yeah, so I think like I said, fabricating some steel bumpers to go underneath the cladding. The locker, so putting the lockers in the front and rear. And then, there's not a ton left. It's almost, and my wife would be probably laughing at me right now because she knows it's a lie. They're never done. Right?
They're never done.
I did buy her a Vehicross, so that's kind of like mine's almost done. So now I'm shifting to hers right now. So got a buddy in California who's rebuilding a new transmission auto for hers, kind of a bulletproof automatic. Yeah, so awesome. There's a guy, Garrett Adams, he's phenomenal, and out of California that builds these 4L30s. And we just got the lift on and put the engine in for her, and it's getting there. So we're getting her to the point of where we're hoping that hers automatic, flanges, automatic TOD, all that stuff, she's going to be kind of at base camp. So we'll have the tent on hers and whatnot, and then we can go take ours and go do the really hard stuff and have fun. I did hint earlier, maybe a solid axle swap at some point, if I can find the right axle and get the right motivation, right?
Yeah.
And decide I really want to cut up a fairly rare vehicle.
Yeah, that's the tough thing. You and I were talking a little bit about my Z off camera, and when you have these vehicles that are relatively rare and only getting rarer, it's tough because there's things that make you want to keep it pristine, if you will, but then the other part of you that says, well, there's so many things that could be better.
Right.
I want to do that, With the engine that's getting ready to go back into Onconius, I thought very deeply about just throwing an LS or a GM 6-cylinder in there.
Yep.
And I've had many people, not like to toot my own horn, but I've had many people say, hey, in the Nissan community say, hey, like you and Nick Schulte, you have two of the most beautiful first gens that exist. And so the thing that keeps pulling me back is, it does have a Chevy, a Dana 44 axle under it, but the heart and everything is still Nissan. So don't make it so much of a Frankenstein. So it's a hard decision. It
is. When I built, I had a 1988 Trooper, 4-door, 4-cylinder, all of 120 horsepower. And I did a solid axle swap on it and ran 36s and re-geared it. But my whole thing was, to your point, was it's got a Jeep axle, but everything else is Isuzu, right? And that was, and I had Terra Lows in the transfer case and 538s front and rear, and it was a ton of fun, but it was 120 horsepower at best, right?
Yeah,
it was
shaking on the highway.
Yeah. Third gear was a popular gear, right? Out of a 5-speed. So.
Okay, I think we covered pretty much everything. The last question for you is favorite trail that you've ever run.
Okay.
Overland, rock crawly, whatever, just favorite trail.
Okay. I'll give you two, and for two
take
different
it.
reasons. So one of them is a trail called Rogers Road in Browns Camp in Tillamook National Forest up in Oregon.
Okay.
Not a technical trail, but my kids loved it. And so it had a bunch of whoops, and you do this almost the entire trail, right? And it was just, and they would wee. So memories wise, that's probably one of my favorites.
Amazing.
I ran years ago. I ran a trail called Strike Ravine, and down in
heard of that one.
down in Moab. It's kind of south a little bit.
Yep.
I don't think it's well documented. I don't think a lot of people go out there. We ran it one day, and it was an ISUZU run. It was like 2002 maybe. There was like 15 rigs. We were like, ISUZU, those who don't know, ISUZU used to be the #2 largest annual run in Moab. For years.
Wow.
So it was Jeep Easter Safari, and it was called ISUZU, right?
Nice.
Yeah, for a lot of years, and then. Anyways, we won't get into all the reasons why they aren't around anymore. But Strike Ravine was an awesome trail. Not super technical hard. We were running our Trooper IFS 32s with a locker in the front. And it was just challenging enough, but it was just one of those trails where you go, I got to go back there.
Yeah.
I got to go back.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Love it.
those are my two.
Love it. Okay. Now, you don't have to give this information out, but if you want to, is there any social media or anything you want to throw out where people could potentially get a hold of you if they have questions about ISUZUs?
Yeah, absolutely. So _VX. The name of my rig, for those that I don't think we covered it, is the Dung Beetle. My oldest daughter, being the jokester she is, I was showing her pictures from our first trip out to Moab, and she goes, "It looks like a dung beetle crawling over stuff." And I said, "That's the name." That's it. So now I drive a Dung Beetle. I tried to convince my wife to make her Stink Bug, but she absolutely refused. So so Dung Beetle, all one word, _VX on Instagram, or you can look me up on Facebook. Just my name. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's close this out.
Cool.
If you want to help out the channel, you can simply purchase something out of the Amazon link below. It doesn't cost you anything additional, but if you click on that link and then do your normal shopping, we'll get a little marketing kickback. You can also check out our shop, find some cool Rogue Overland swag like his hat and this mug. Help us out there. And then, as I said, if you enjoy outdoor and off-road content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll see you on the trail. Copyright Rogue Overland 2024, all rights reserved.